Was he your idea? Yeah. Thank you so much for
Good morning. We'll get started here in a second, so please be seated. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the 74th Annual Memorial Day Service at Arlington National Cemetery. My name is Turner Kobayashi, coordinator of this annual event. We welcome those that are watching online and wish you were here. Each year, we gather here to honor those brave Japanese Americans that served our country and are now interred here. It began with members of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team in 1948 and continues to this day. We now have seen our list grow to over 100 men and women that we honor. As you know, recently we suffered the loss of a great Japanese American, a Hart Mountain World War II internee, a U.S. Army intelligence officer, mayor of San Jose, 10-term California Congressman, Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Transportation, Norman Y. Mineta. Please join me in a moment of silence for this great American public servant and friend. In 1993, at that time, Congressman Mineta was our keynote speaker for this event. It was my first year as chairman of this event, following my father's passing in 1992, and I will always remember the honor of him joining us here. Since 2021, we have added to our list to honor, in Section 25, U.S. Army Colonel Jimmy Kanaya. Later in our program, there's a special tribute to the Colonel. We are very fortunate to have as our guest today Colonel Kanaya's wife, Lynn, and his granddaughter, Lily Wright, who came from Portland, Oregon, and Seattle, Washington. Thank you very much for coming. In Section 7, U.S. Army Colonel George Nakamura and his wife, Sylvia. This is a special one. He was my Uncle George because he married my dad's sister-in-law, so it's a special one that Uncle George is here. In Section 60, U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Matthew David Suzuki. In Section 68, U.S. Army First Class George Shimizu and his wife Helena. And U.S. Army Sergeant Tadashi Nakamura. In the columbarium, Niche 5, U.S. Army Sergeant First Class Luther Nakamura. Also in the columbarium, Niche 8, Robert K. Yoshida and Robert K. Yoshida II, U.S. Navy and U.S. Army, respectively. We are fortunate to renew our student speaker portion of the program from the Spark M. Matsunaga Elementary School this year. We have been doing this since 2012 and are happy to start back up again due to the break in COVID-19. We also have the principal of the school with us today, Mr. James Sweeney. We'd like to welcome him and thank him for his and his students' continued support to our program over the many years. We also are very happy to have from the Japanese Embassy, Minister of Management and Coordination, Koichi Ai, Congressional Affairs Minister Tomoaki Shikigawa, First Secretary Ms. Fumio Suzawa. Welcome. We are fortunate and appreciative to be here today. Please let me introduce the speakers and the leaders of our sponsoring groups to welcome us. First, Linda Sato Adams, Co-President of JACL DC Chapter.
Hi, welcome to all of you who've joined us today, and especially to the veterans, their spouses, and family members. Memorial Day has been held for 74 Instagram in Arlington National Cemetery, and we'd like to thank the Kobayashi family and their father, Ki Kobayashi, for beginning this tradition in 1948, just 3 years after the end of World War II. This year, our theme is Defending Our Freedoms in Adversity, and it's a poignant one as we consider the adversity we're being faced with today. There's racism, responsible gun laws, women's rights, and the war in Ukraine, just to name a few. In 1941, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt described 4 American ideals he wished to extend to the world: freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. With this, he shared the foundations for a healthy and strong democracy, and among them were equity of opportunity for youth and others, security for those who need it, jobs for those who can work, ending of special privileges for the few, and the preservation of civil liberties for all. Now, Roosevelt believed that those 4 freedoms were attainable within his own lifetime or within his generation. And yet on this year, on the 80th anniversary of Executive Order 9066, which he signed and brought about the incarceration of 120,000 people of Japanese descent, we're still falling short of those ideals. That was an insecure time back in World War II with a global war that had begun in 1939, and there was a lot to fear. Fear led to the incarceration during World War II with no due process to those of Japanese descent in America. And yet, despite the adversity against them, approximately 33,000 Japanese Americans served in the military during or shortly after that time. Those Niseis believed in those American ideals, and they went on to become the most decorated unit for its size and length of service in U.S. history. But our freedoms come with a cost, and they require sacrifice, responsibility, maintenance, and defense. Freedom is not a given. We must be careful not to let our freedoms get lost, be taken for granted, or just to give them away. This past week has been a tragic one, but I still have hope. Do we want to give in to fear? No, we do not. Must we do more to safeguard our freedoms? Yes, we do. I see our students as our hope. I see them standing up for their beliefs, and I see them adding their voice in order to create a positive change. We must ensure a well-rounded education so that they are well-informed and that the wrongful actions that have taken place in the past are not repeated in the future. We hope our students learn from and overcome the current adversities that they face so that they can truly cherish and value our freedoms in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Now I'd like to introduce Gerald Yamada, President of the Japanese American Veterans Association.
Thank you, Turner. On behalf of the Japanese American Veterans Association, I welcome you to the 74th Annual Memorial Day service at the Arlington National Cemetery. JAVA is again proud to co-sponsor this service. We thank the Ki Kobayashi family for organizing this event again. Today, we honor the soldiers who died while serving our country. For our community, we honor the 800 Nisei soldiers who died during World War II. They served at a very difficult time in our history. Their loyalty was distrusted based solely on their ethnicity. Yet they answered the call to serve to show that they were loyal Americans and still had faith in America. They truly died defending our freedoms in adversity. The sacrifice of those 800, together with the service of the 33,000 Nisei men and women who served in World War II, did make a difference for our community. Their patriotism and personal courage forged a lasting legacy that had benefited all of us. Their legacy enabled these historic events. Japanese immigrants were allowed to become naturalized citizens. Executive Order 9066 was revoked and repudiated. The Redress Commission concluded that Executive Order 9066 was motivated by prejudice, war hysteria, and the lack of political leadership. Those whose lives were disrupted by Executive Order 9066 received a letter of apology from the President of the United States and a $20,000 redress payment. The National Japanese American Memorial to Patriotism in World War II was built with the names of those Nisei soldiers killed during World War II inscribed on the memorial's granite walls. The Congressional Gold Medal was bestowed on them by a grateful nation, and the Go for Broke Japanese American World War II Forever Stamp was issued to honor their service. This annual Memorial Day service started in 1948 by the Washington, D.C. JCL chapter. Is a continuing tribute to attest that their service did make a difference. And we are here to affirm that we have benefited from their legacy. The Nisei soldiers answered the call to serve as their way to fight for the rights and dignity of the Japanese American community. On this day and every day, let us embrace their legacy by keeping faith in America as our way to fight the ongoing war against prejudice as the Nisei soldiers did during World War II. And in appreciation to all who have served and are serving, we simply say, thank you for your service and God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. I'd like to introduce John Tobey, Board Chairman of the National Japanese American Memorial Foundation.
Hi, good morning, everyone. On behalf of the board, the staff, and the supporters of the National Japanese American Memorial Foundation, we are proud and honored to participate in this annual ceremony. After not being able to hold our usual Memorial Day ceremony for 2 years, it is wonderful to finally see many of you in person and to share this opportunity to pay homage to those who served and to also acknowledge the role, their families, and the critical support that they provided. This is a time to reflect upon the courage, integrity, selfless dedication, and patriotism of those we honor today. These sentiments echo the mission of the National Japanese American Memorial Foundation. I'm going to wait for the plane to go by. These sentiments echo the mission of the National Japanese American Memorial Foundation. We are dedicated to preserving the legacy of the Japanese Americans during World War II by honoring their heroic military service and patriotism while educating the public of their unjust incarceration and sacrifices. We vow to remember the sacrifices of those who served and know we can never fully repay the debt that we owe to our fallen heroes and their families. And because of their sacrifices, we are able to enjoy our freedom today. We also take this opportunity to educate the community and the public about our shared values for duty, honor, country, and to also recommit our efforts to ensure that all people are treated fairly and equally. Our speakers today will underscore the need to stay vigilant as we pursue a more perfect union. I want to thank the partner organizations, JCL DC Chapter, JCL National, and JAVA for their support. And it goes about saying that we also need to acknowledge the Turner Kobayashi and his entire family for once again bringing us all together for the 74th time. So pretty amazing that we've been doing this almost 75 years, right? So again, thank you for allowing me to participate in this special ceremony. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Joining us this year as a sponsor is Japanese American Citizens League National. We have Bridget Kevaney, the Norman Y. Mineta Policy Fellow, but unfortunately Bridget wasn't able to make it today. So greeting us today will be Alex Shinkawa, the Daniel K. Inouye Policy Fellow. Daniel. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to today's Memorial Day Remembrance. Like it was said earlier, unfortunately, my colleague Bridget Kevaney couldn't be here with us today due to health issues. I'm deeply honored to join you all in commemorating the lives of our brave Japanese American veterans. This year's Memorial Day event, which is the 74th year, acknowledges the adverse conditions that JA veterans faced and their willingness to make the ultimate sacrifice while defending our country's freedom. As one of the leading national JA organizations with an expansive platform, the Japanese American Citizens League recognizes its duty to acknowledge and share the voices and experiences of those in service. We wish to take this opportunity on behalf of our members to thank those who selflessly served and sacrificed their lives in the Japanese American Military Intelligence Service, the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, and the 100th Infantry Battalion Group, along with Japanese Americans who have served in all branches of the military and in all conflicts and gave their lives for our country. On a personal note, my great-uncle Jack was a veteran, and even though he never really spoke to me about his time in the service, he was there for me while I was growing up, and he always tried to do right by his family. He was there for his wife, he was there for his children, and eventually he was there for his grandchildren. And he passed away 3 years ago, and I wish that while he was still here with us, I had taken more time to thank him for all the sacrifices that he made for all of our family. And I know that many of the veterans that we honor here today joined the military for various different reasons, but I also know that they were all trying to be there for their own families in their own ways. And as it was stated earlier, we've lost so many other veterans within our community. The recent passing of Secretary Norman Mineta reminds each of us here today just how precious life is. Secretary Mineta, who was an intelligence officer during the Korean War, saw the terrible cost of war firsthand and would go on to become a pillar of our community and a prime example of bravery in the face of adversity. In his long distinguished career as a public servant, Secretary Mineta always made it a point to underscore the ultimate sacrifice made by generations of American servicemen and servicewomen, including Japanese American veterans whose sacrifices we are recognizing today. We are honored to have this opportunity today to collaborate with so many well-respected and hard-working individuals and groups who are committed to preserving and protecting the legacy of our brave veterans. I'd like to take this time to give special thanks to Turner Kobayashi and the entire Kobayashi family for organizing this historic event for the past 74 years. Your family's commitment to Japanese American military members who sacrificed their lives for the country is nothing short of awe-inspiring. I'd also like to thank
and welcome our student speaker, Thomas Krulak, for being with us here today to develop remarks honoring the service and sacrifice of our deceased veterans and family. Lastly, I'd like to thank today's keynote speaker, Dr. James McNaughton, for his presence and sage words. I am grateful to each and every one of you for allowing me the opportunity to be here, and I'd like to thank our veterans once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex. That's wonderful. At this time, I'd like to introduce Janice Faden, the JACL DC Chapter Community Engagement Chair.
Thank you, Turner, and good morning, everyone. Since 2012, 10 years ago, Turner Kobayashi and his family have invited students from Spark M. Matsunaga Elementary School in Montgomery County to speak at this annual ceremony. The students come to offer the perspective of our youth on the special occasion. The students' words invariably give us our hope for the future during these challenging times. But before I introduce Thomas Krulak, I would like to recognize his parents, who are sitting in the second row here, and his sister, Michael Krulak, Naomi Krulak, and Samantha Krulak. Welcome and thank you. Thank you for bringing Thomas, and thank you. You must be very proud parents. Also, I'd like to recognize Jimmy Sweeney, who I think Turner mentioned already, principal in the back there. Waving, standing, blue shirt, and his school counselor who brings us these speakers and guides them in their preparations. Ms. Janine Jackson, thank you, and her husband. Thomas Krulak, I spoke to him this morning. I said, Thomas, do you mind or do you like being in the spotlight? And Thomas says, sort of, some of the time, and you will see, as I saw this morning, that he does present extremely well. So, Thomas is a fifth grader at Matsunaga Elementary School. At his school, he holds important leadership positions. He is a safety patrol member, and he is also editor-in-chief of the school newspaper called the Matsunaga Post. For extracurricular activities, Thomas plays ice hockey with the Montgomery Ice Devils and baseball for the Montgomery County AAA Nationals. He is a Cub Scout, where he recently received the rank of Arrow of Light. Thomas, being extremely athletic, also participates in skiing, mountain biking, and wakeboarding that I recently learned is the same as water skiing. So, already an accomplished member of his community, Thomas strives to be a good role model. And not only that, he plans to attend college and become an engineer. So please join me in welcoming Thomas Krulak.
Hello, good morning. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you to my school counselor, Ms. Janine Jackson, and school principal, Mr. James Sweeney, for selecting me to participate in this magnificent event. Also, I am very thankful to the members of JAVA, JACL DC Chapter, NJAMF, and JACL National, who carry on this tradition every year and are giving me the opportunity to speak here today. What is Memorial Day? This national holiday is one of the most important days in our country. Memorial Day honors soldiers and veterans who have fallen, fighting for our country. So many people have had to sacrifice many things to keep our country free. Many people participate in Memorial Day parades, services, and events. Overall, this day is to remember and honor those who committed to the military, those who died fighting, and all of those who made sacrifices for our country. The parents of 3 of my neighborhood friends are in the military. One day, their dad received a new assignment and they had to move away to Texas. I never saw them again, and that reminds me of how so many families across the country are affected by being members of the armed forces. My friends have been through some difficult times with deployments, but they have shown strength as a family. They support one another, and their friends and community support them. That is what many families across the country do every day. They have adapted to a lifestyle of constant change by showing patience and strength. Military families show a true dedication to our country by making this sacrifice to defend our freedom. I believe everyone in our country should honor Memorial Day because everyone benefits from the actions and sacrifices that military members make every day. These service members, many of whom we will never know, dedicate their lives by fighting for our freedom and safety. They fight a battle every day, whether it be mental, physical, or emotional. They protect us from danger every day. They fight to ensure that our country remains strong. The Java Memorial Day tradition reminds us to keep the fallen in our thoughts. We should not forget what they have given for our country. Therefore, I am proud to stand here today to honor the military servicemen and women of America, past and present. Thank you.
Thomas, we would like to present you with this certificate. Let me read it so everyone knows what it says. On behalf of the DC chapter of the Japanese American Citizens League, the Japanese American Citizens League, the Japanese American Veterans Association, and the National Japanese American Memorial Foundation. Your certificate we would like to present you with, which reads, Certificate of Appreciation, presented to Thomas Krulak, Spark M. Matsunaga Elementary School, for presenting remarks at the 74th Annual Memorial Day Service, Defending Our Freedoms in Adversity at Arlington National Cemetery, May 29th, 2022. Also, a gift certificate for you. We so greatly appreciate your representing our youth and presenting such a message of hope that you presented today.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. I got the pleasure of meeting him earlier today, and don't let that thin body look. He's a killer defenseman on ice hockey. And like we agree, offense sells tickets, but defense wins championships. So keep doing it, buddy. At this time, I'd like to introduce Gerald Yamada, Java President, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Turner. It's my privilege to introduce Dr. James McLaughlin, who will be our keynote speaker. Jim and I go back many years. Jim has been a long-time Java member. He has a long and distinguished service career. He served in the U.S. Army, he served in the Army Reserves, and he worked as an Army civilian. In that latter capacity, he was an Army historian. And one of his works really has benefited our community, is entitled The Nisei Linguist. And it's a story about the Japanese American service in the MIS. At the time of publication, it came out at a very critical time, in that very little was known about the service of the MIS. Japanese Americans served as interpreters, linguists, and interrogators. They went through an intensive training program, and there were about 6,000 of them that served. They were attached to, I think, every combat unit in the Pacific, and really was America's secret weapon in the war in the Pacific. And Jim's book was the first definitive publication that describes that period of time. So he has a wealth of information, and we look forward to his remarks. Jim, may I welcome you to the podium?
Thank you, Gerald, for that terrific introduction. I really appreciate it. And Thomas, great job on your speech. You're a hard act to follow. So thanks very much for your remarks. I'm so honored to be here today, to be invited to be the guest speaker. First, I want to acknowledge our distinguished guests here and the distinguished organizations that make this ceremony happen together with the Kobayashi family year after year after year. But I really want to especially thank JAVA. I remember very, very strongly when the first JAVA president, Phil Ishio, invited me to Washington, D.C. to meet MIS veterans in the D.C. area. And it was, Phil Ishio was a MISer himself. And it was really the beginning of a very long education on the role of the MIS Nisei in World War II. We're gathered here this morning to honor those who lost their lives serving in the armed forces in time of war, especially those Americans of Japanese ancestry who gave their lives for their country during the Second World War and in subsequent conflicts around the world. When most people think of Nisei soldiers, they think of the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. When I began learning the story, I approached it from a different direction. I began learning about the Military Intelligence Service. And at the time I was working at the Defense Language Institute, and there were 3 buildings there, they're still there, classroom buildings, that are named for 3 MIS linguists, Terry Mizutari, Frank Hachiya, and George I. Nakamura. All 3 were awarded the Silver Star posthumously for valor in the war in the Pacific. All 3 were MISers. As a historian, I became fascinated with how these young men answered their nation's call to defend our freedoms, your freedoms and mine. They fought and died on distant battlefields and in the face of such prejudice at home. We should always remember that the Nisei soldiers of World War II fought on 2 fronts. As President Truman told veterans of the 442 shortly after the war, you fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you have won. Keep up that fight, and we will continue to win to make this great republic stand for just what the Constitution says it stands for, the welfare of all the people all the time. But this double victory came at a steep price. Memorial Day is set aside for us to reflect upon the price they paid, they and their families paid. This weekend, we are part of really national commemorations. Thousands of Americans will come together in cemeteries and other public spaces to listen to speeches like mine and place flowers on graves. It's an American tradition more than 150 years old. As we've already heard, Memorial Day began right after the Civil War, and it was soon renamed, started as Decoration Day, soon renamed Memorial Day, and the tradition quickly spread throughout the country. As the years passed, other Americans fell on other battlefields, and as the years passed, along with the 4th of July and other national holidays, Memorial Day became one of the cornerstones of what some have called America's civil religion. That set of beliefs and practices that are the foundation of our republic. When we join together in a ceremony like today, when we fly the American flag on those special days, we are reminded of what we share as Americans, what makes us Americans. It's especially fitting that each year Memorial Day also marks the end of Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I've always liked that connection because military service, and yes, military sacrifice, has been an important part of the Asian American and Japanese American story from the very beginning. Today's ceremony is special. As you've already heard, it stretches back 3/4 of a century to when another MISer, Lieutenant Ki Kobayashi, organized a ceremony to honor the first 2 Nisei soldiers who were interred here at Arlington National Cemetery. We are grateful to his family who support this ceremony to this day. This weekend, Japanese Americans and their friends will gather at ceremonies such as this in military cemeteries in Italy and France, where 442 and 100th Battalion soldiers lie, in the Punch Bowl in Hawaii, and in cemeteries across this great land, wherever Nisei veterans have their final resting places. When America entered the war, here's the history lecture part. When America entered the war in 1941, it was not clear whether the Nisei generation would get the chance to fight for their country. In February 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt approved Executive Order 9066, which led to the forced removal and confinement of everyone of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast, including citizen Nisei. But a year later, Roosevelt declared every loyal American citizen should be given the opportunity to serve this country wherever his skills will make the greatest contribution. This was a dramatic reversal of the previous policy, of course, that had labeled American citizens of Japanese ancestry 4C, or enemy aliens ineligible for service. So these Nisei volunteers were organized into the 442nd Regimental Combat Team, which joined the 100th Battalion in Italy. This story is well known. But on this Memorial Day, we should also remember more private events that began a few months later when telegrams began arriving at the homes of Nisei soldiers telling mothers and fathers, "We deeply regret to inform you." In September 1943, the 100th Battalion went into battle in Italy, and the telegrams began to arrive announcing that their son or husband had been killed, wounded, or declared missing. Imagine, just weeks before the Christmas holidays, to receive such devastating news. Issei mothers and fathers were devastated. They were shattered. For those families, their lives were changed in an instant. Even if they didn't get a telegram, other mothers and fathers, brothers, sisters, wives, held their breath. Would the next telegram come for them? If not today, maybe tomorrow or the day after. It was a time of deep anxiety. As the fighting continued, each telegram landed like a bursting shell, instantly causing overwhelming grief. On the mainland, many Issei parents had already lost so much. Their shops, their farms, maybe their fishing boat, their possessions, their dignity. And now this. For some, it was more than they could bear. To be honest, some never recovered from the shock. The news reports mention unfamiliar Italian place names, the Volturno River, Monte Cassino, Anzio. The 100th soon earned the nickname the Suicide Battalion. I don't think that was very reassuring to the families waiting back home. But what choice did they have? America was at war, fighting what today we would call an existential war. And their sons, their brothers and husbands were American citizens. America and its allies were fighting to defend freedom so that no autocratic ruler would ever again dare to invade a neighboring country. The Nisei had a duty as American citizens to fight for their country and thereby to prove their loyalty as well as their courage. They fought alongside other Americans of other colors, as well as soldiers from other nations, united in a common cause. Well, the families at home had a duty as well, a different duty. The duty to be patient, the duty to pray, the duty to hope for a sign their soldier was still alive, a personal letter, a photo, a postcard, anything but another War Department telegram. When the 100th was joined by the 442 in Italy, the War Department telegrams kept coming, more of them than before, and some were now being delivered in mainland camps with names that, like the Italian place names, most Americans had never heard of. Names like Manzanar, Heart Mountain, Jerome, Tule Lake. Names that every American can now read on the Japanese-American Memorial to Patriotism, just a couple blocks from our Congress on Capitol Hill. News from the battlefront now mentioned even more unfamiliar place names: Belvedere, Bruyères, Bifontaine, the Vosges Mountains, and the Po River Valley. In some of the most intense fighting of the war in eastern France, the 100th and the 442 suffered a combined total of more than 1,000 battle casualties, including over 200 dead or missing and more than 800 wounded. And from across the Pacific, other telegrams, though in smaller numbers, brought tragic news to Issei parents, coming from unfamiliar place names like New Guinea, Leyte, Luzon, and Okinawa. With little public recognition, the MIS were likewise paying in blood to defend our freedoms. Each soldier lost was a terrible tragedy for his family, but it was just as much a loss to our nation. How many future teachers and business owners did we lose? How many doctors and lawyers did we lose? How many other Spark Matsunagas did we lose, who could have dedicated their lives to public service, to making America a more perfect union? How many great Americans like Jimmy Kaniya, who fought with the 442nd, survived a German prisoner of war camp, as we will hear in just a few moments, and then went on to serve for 34 years of honorable service in the U.S. Army, retiring with the rank of colonel. We can never fully calculate the cost. Each was a unique individual lost, with unique gifts and a promising future cut short. By the time the war ended, Japanese-American families shared their sorrow with thousands of other grieving American families. And here in Washington, D.C., President Truman honored what remained of the 100th and the 442 with their 7th Presidential Unit citation. But by then, there were many gaps in the ranks. The Nisei soldiers and their families had indeed paid a high price. After the war, other Americans of Japanese descent donned the uniform to fight America's war in other distant lands, in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq, following in the footsteps of the original Nisei soldiers. Since 1945, our country has honored the Nisei soldiers with military awards, too many to count, from the Purple Heart all the way to the Medal of Honor, with monuments, with parades, with a postage stamp most recently, with Hollywood movies, museum exhibits, and a few years ago, the Congressional Gold Medal. But in my mind, the most meaningful tribute the nation can pay to each fallen soldier is a simple soldier's headstone in a place of honor such as we see today. Arrayed in straight rows, like soldiers in formation, we can see each name, but together we also see them as a proud part of American history laid out before us. The Nisei soldiers who lie here today became part of that American story. They rest in the company of other loyal men and women who served before them, including other individuals of Japanese ancestry, such as the 7 Issei seamen, whose names are inscribed on the USS Maine monument just uphill from us here. Those who died fighting for freedom in Korea and Vietnam, those who fell in later conflicts. They are now part of what makes America America. All Americans give them our heartfelt thanks for their service and their sacrifices. Their example of patriotism and valor is an inspiration to all Americans who continue to defend our freedoms in the face of whoever threatens our nation or seeks to divide us, to defend this great nation from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'd like to close with the words of Senator Matsunaga, who spoke at a ceremony here at Arlington National Cemetery in 1963, when he was just a congressman from Hawaii. He said, "If the living, the beneficiaries of their sacrifices, are truly intent upon showing our gratitude, we must do more than gather together for speech-making and perfunctory ceremonies. We must undertake to carry on the unfinished work which they so nobly advanced. The fight against prejudice is not confined to the battlefield alone. It is still here and now with us." Senator Matsunaga is just one inspiring example of what it means to lead a life of service and to defend our freedoms in adversity. Thank you for coming this morning, and thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you. Thank you very much.
Gerald, Linda, Alex, John, please come up. Doctor, please.
Well, first of all, Jim, thank you for your presentation and sharing your wealth of information. Let's give him another round of applause. On behalf of the sponsoring organizations, we thank you for your presentation, Jim. And in commemoration, we'd like to present you with this image of the Go for Broke stamp that was issued last year.
Thank you, Dr. McNaughton. That was a wonderful speech. At this time, we have a special tribute for our guest of honor this year, Colonel Jimmy Kanaya. I'd like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Mark Nakagawa, U.S. Army retired.
Good morning. I've got a tough act to follow. First, young Mr. Krulak, Dr. McNaughton. There's a reason why he's a doctor of history, and then you caught me. Well, Janice, Linda, Lynn, Lily, Alex, John, Gerald, Minister Ide, and all the other folks you brought from the embassy. There's a lot of dignitaries, friends, and families that I haven't seen in over 2 years because this has been a virtual ceremony. It's great to see this ceremony with all this participation. Lynn, I'm going to try my darndest, and I'm not going to screw up this tribute, this honor and tribute to Colonel Jimmy Kanaya. So please bear with me if I do. Not General. See, I already screwed up there. Colonel Jimmy Kanaya, U.S. Army retired, was born on October 3rd, 1920 in Oregon, and became a 3-war, highly decorated veteran, serving a total of 34 years. Think about it, 3 wars. When asked about his medals and decorations, Jimmy would say, "I was only doing my job." Yet his actions on the battlefield belie his modesty. He was a medic for the infamous 442nd Regimental Combat Team that we all hear about. He was awarded a Silver Star for evacuating wounded in Italy and received a battlefield commission. That's when he was an enlisted soldier, and because of his gallantry, he was awarded, became an officer for his gallantry and valor against enemy. For a solo evacuation of his mortally wounded platoon sergeant, he was also awarded another Bronze Star with a V Valor for victory, Oakley's Cluster, as well as the Combat Medical Badge. For an infantryman, you earn the Combat Infantryman Badge. For the medic, you earn the Combat Medical Badge. That's a big honor in itself. The Bronze Star inscription, the back of the Bronze Star, was the following words: for meritorious and heroic achievement. His Purple Heart was earned in the Vosges Mountain of France for being wounded in combat, and this is where he was also captured as a prisoner of war. He spent most of his time during the war as a POW in Szubin, Poland, a camp for army officers where he was ruthlessly interrogated. In January of 1945, ahead of the Allied advance, the POWs were marched from Poland to another place close to Hammelburg, Germany. During this brutal 45-day march, there was no stopping. There was very little food, and there were no supplies. Jimmy witnessed arms, legs, body parts sticking out from snow. Boots, gloves, anything to keep warm were taken from dead soldiers along the roadway. Jimmy suffered frostbite and neuropathy in his lower extremities. He remained a POW, a prisoner of war, until the end of the war, much like the Kanaya family that were interned in the Minidoka Relocation Center in Idaho until the end of the war. At the end of the war, Jimmy still continued his service in the Army. He was part of the Military Intelligence Service during the occupation of Japan, where he worked as a translator and interrogator at the Far East Command in Tokyo. Subsequently, during the Korean War, he was attached to the Allied Translator Interrogator Section, 8th Army, and the United Nations Command in Korea. And in July of 1962, he was attached to the Medical Department Operations and Training Advisory Group to the Vietnamese Army Medical Branch Military Assistant Advisory Group, his third war. Colonel Kanaya retired in 1974 from his last position as Deputy Commandant, Medical Training Center, Fort Sam Houston, Texas. At his retirement, after 34 years of honorable and distinguished service, he was awarded the Legion of Merit for exceptional meritorious conduct in performing outstanding services and achievement. The French government also recognized Colonel Kanaya during the 60th anniversary of World War II in the June of 2004, when he was awarded the French Legion of Honor by the French Ministry of Defense for services rendered in the liberation of Brière and Bifontaine. These are the battles that was a prelude to the rescue of the infamous Lost Battalion. Those that knows American Army history realize that the U.S. Army recognizes it as one of the top 10 battles of U.S. Army history, and he was part of that. In 2012, Jimmy received the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor Congress can bestow for his services with the infamous 442nd Regimental Combat Team, the Go for Broke Regiment. While Jimmy made military his life's work, he never gave up on his goal of earning undergraduate and graduate degrees. He valued education and recognized that knowledge he gained from coursework helped him do a better job and become a better leader. For 22 years, that's a long time, he took courses near the Army installations where he was assigned and earned credits to earn his college undergraduate degree and a few years later, his master's. As with other 442 veterans, as well as the 1 Puka Puka, the 100th, and the MIS veterans, Colonel Kanaya's service would pave the way for future generations of Japanese Americans serving in the military. The words of Timothy 2, chapter 4, verses 7 to 8 describe Jimmy's journey in life. I've fought the good fight. I've finished the race. I've kept the faith. This humble hero inspires us all to continue to do our best, to be the best and relish life of freedom that he and others fought so hard to achieve. Colonel Kanaya, U.S. Army retired. As a retired U.S. Army officer myself, I honor and thank you for paving the way for other Japanese Americans to be able to serve in the military. And for that, I salute you. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was wonderful. Len and Lily, we honor you today, so thank you for coming. At this time, I'd like to introduce, for the reading of the Japanese American Creed, Michelle Amano, JACLDC board member. Michelle's been doing this for over 30 years, and it's truly an honor for her to read this. So, Michelle.
I am proud that I'm an American citizen of Japanese ancestry, for my very background makes me appreciate more fully the wonderful advantages of this nation. I believe in her institutions, ideals, and traditions. I glory in her heritage. I boast of her history. I trust in her future. She has granted me liberties and opportunities such as no individual enjoys in this world today. She has given me an education befitting kings. She has entrusted me with the responsibilities of the franchise. She has permitted me to build a home, to earn a livelihood, to worship, think, speak, and act as I please, as a free man equal to every other man. Although some individuals may discriminate against me, I shall never become bitter or lose faith, for I know that such persons are not representative of the majority of the American people. True, I shall do all in my power to discourage such practices, but I shall do it in the American way, above board, in the open, through courts of law, by education, by proving myself to be worthy of equal treatment and consideration. I am firm in my belief that American sportsmanship and attitude of fair play will judge citizenship and patriotism on the basis of action and achievement, and not on the basis of physical characteristics. Because I believe in America, and I trust she believes in me, and because I have received innumerable benefits from her, I pledge myself to do honor to her at all times and in all places, to support her Constitution, to obey her laws, to respect her flag, to defend her against all enemies, foreign or domestic, to actively assume my duties and obligations as a citizen cheerfully and without any reservations whatsoever, in the hope that I may become a better American in a greater America.
That creed was written by Michelle's grandfather, Mike Masaoka, so that's why it's very special. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge veterans and active service members, so if you're here today, please come up and introduce yourself. So please, veterans.
Mark Nakagawa, U.S. Army, who?
Cynthia Macri, retired Navy.
Howard High, U.S. Army veteran.
Al Goshi, United States Army.
Jim McNaughton, U.S. Army retired.
Gerald Yamada, U.S. Army.
James Joy, United States Navy.
Bradley Sakaguchi, United States Army.
Lori Kelsey Sakaguchi, United States Army.
Robert Fennell Jr., Chief Petty Officer, United States Navy.
Shiro Mori, United States Army.
Please rise for the playing of taps. At this time, are there any announcements that we'd like to make? Or before that, I'd like to give the opportunity for Lynn or Lily to come forward and say a few words. Thank you.
We're all here today to honor and pay tribute to the Japanese Americans and Nisei veterans who gave all in their calls to service. They gave us, and especially of those who were waiting for them to come home in Minidoka, honor, respect, dignity, and the courage to keep going. Their memory and their legacy has been a blessing, and our family thanks you, Java, the Memorial Foundation, and JCL for paying this special honor to Jimmy Kanaya. Thank you.
Okay, I'd just like to thank Arlington National Cemetery for supporting us for 74 years now, specifically Warren McFarland, who coordinates this event with us each year. Are there any other announcements that anyone would like to make? Upcoming events or anything? Hey, Gerald?
I'd like to remind folks that on June 9th, Java, in partnership with the Japan Information and Cultural Center, is sponsoring a photo exhibit of World War II veterans. It's the first time we've collaborated with JICC, and it's really been a wonderful experience. But the exhibit itself has been put together by Wayne Sato, who's a photographer, well-known photographer in the LA area. And over the past 20 years, he's gone through the country to take photographs of World War II veterans. And he has compiled those photographs in two beautiful books, and he's going to extract from those books and put together an exhibit for us here, together with profiles of the soldiers that will be highlighted. We also will be including 5 post-World War II veterans. But anyway, June 9th through the July 22nd, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So hope you can drop in. It's free of charge, open to the public. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other announcements? Okay.
Hi, everyone. We would like to invite you to our first in-person event. Oh, actually, it'll be the second. This will be the first. But our second in-person event for the JCLDC chapter. It's going to be our annual picnic, and it's going to be on Sunday, June 12th, starting at 12 o'clock at the Cabin John Regional Park. So we would just like to invite everybody who's here. We would love to see you and enjoy some time with you to spend together with our friends and family. So thank you.
Any other announcements? That concludes our formal program today. What we do now is we break up into teams and we visit the gravesite. So if you could look at your program, we broke them out into sections and into the columbarium area. So if you would like to go and visit a site and place one of these beautiful flower arrangements, please do that. The way we do that is the flowers for the columbarium and the niche wall are right up here, and my sister, Teresa, is over here. She'll be coordinating that, so please see her, and so she can check off the list so that we can make sure that each one of those are taken properly. Over here in the shade are the remaining flowers, and my nephew Matthew Olkers and my brother Baylor Kobayashi will be coordinating those to be given out for the other sections. I know John Nakahata's here. Thank you, John, always. He comes and he helps with, I believe, section 12 mostly, or 13. But okay, he does the higher one. So, but he will coordinate a team there. So please come see one of my family members, and we'd be happy to help you get these flowers out so that we can honor those that are interred here. So, other than that, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.